In an average year, Missoulians consume more than 8 billion gallons of water and produce 140 tons of household hazardous waste. Here are some tips on keeping your water clean. Buy only the quantity of household chemicals that you need for the job. If you have leftovers, give them to someone who can use them. If you still have a product that you can't use up or dispose of safely, save it for the next household hazardous waste collection day. Because clean water depends on you.
I brought in some motor oil.
Pesticides of all kinds.
15 years of piled up half-empty paint cans.
Some antifreeze and some motor oil that I've been saving.
Brought a bunch of old paint and varnishes and stains that the previous owner of the house left in my garage.
Maybe 200 cans of paint and asbestos and DDT and just loads of stuff that we brought from my grandmother's house.
It's perfectly obvious that we can't just keep pouring this stuff into the garbage.
We are all concerned about pollution, and we're beginning to do something about it, changing the way we shop and throw things away. But it's not easy to change. In this program, we'll show you changes that can make a difference, that stop pollution before it starts, and protect your family from toxic accidents.
What are you eating?
We'll look at products you use every day to keep your homes clean and fresh, your yards flourishing, and your cars running well. Because when we're cleaning up and fixing up, we may be trashing our air, water, and land in a very big way. And here's one place we can start. The Valdez spill was a very big disaster. But what if there were 24 oil spills like that each year? Well, there are. 260 million gallons of dirty oil is thrown away in this country every year. That's as much oil as 24 Valdez spills. And 176 million gallons of that comes from do-it-yourself oil changers. It's poured out in backyards, down storm sewers, or into trash cans where it can end up in our drinking water and our rivers, bays, and oceans. We can prevent this pollution right now, and we're beginning to do it.
Like everyone else, I've been dumping it in the dumpster, but about the past year I've been saving it for one of these roundups. It's just because it's illegal to dump it in the dumpster.
We lived on a hill and we'd pull it down the hill for use, and now I realize that was you didn't think about things like that back then.
Anytime I have oil and it says free, get rid of it, best get rid of it for the safety of the community.
A few towns have made it really easy for do-it-yourselfers to recycle their oil. In Sunnyvale and some other towns around San Francisco Bay, oil is picked up at the curb every week. The 30,000 gallons Sunnyvale collects every year can be recycled into fuel oil or refined to make motor oil that's just as good as new. In most towns, it may not be this easy to find a place to recycle oil. Try a local gas station, a recycling center, or a household toxics roundup. You might ask your local officials to start curbside pickup or an oil recycling center. And while you're at it, ask them what to do with all the hazardous wastes we all store. When the Stimmen family had to clean out their parents' home of 35 years, they were stuck. There was no safe and legal place in San Leandro to dispose of these toxics. Mike Stimmen had to truck the old paints and pesticides up to his own home in Davis, where he'll be able to take them to a household toxics roundup.
Boy, you can smell that.
As pesticide coordinator for the University of California, Mike knows the hazards of this toxic trash.
One of the concerns that I have is that this little scene is probably repeated hundreds or thousands of times over in every community. There's a tendency to squirrel this stuff away and never throw it out. So somebody's going to have to come along and clean it up eventually.
These old pesticides, paints, and cleaners are headed for safe disposal through a toxics roundup. One-day collections for household hazardous waste, like this one at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, are held more and more often around the country.
If anyone could see by how many cars there are here today, the place is mobbed and it just opened at 9, so there's definitely, interest.
I think it's great. We've been waiting a long time for something like this.
It's got to be an ongoing event. It's got to be something that people can come to and drop it off.
Yes, I would like to see them have a site that we can go to at any time, at least seasonal, if it's not monthly.
Household hazardous waste expert Dana Duxbury has been watching collection programs around the country. They've grown from one in 1980 to over 2,000 programs in 1990.
You first have a program and suddenly people see the need and they say, well, what do I do with things that I begin to generate tomorrow? And it just shows that you need to institutionalize the programs. And we've seen evolution of permanent facilities where you can bring your waste many days, often a month, and these are really beginning to serve people on a much more realistic basis.
There's a national trend toward more careful handling of household toxics, and there's a huge backlog of toxics in millions of garages and basements just waiting for programs to get started. In the next few years, for example, every California county must plan a way to keep household hazardous waste out of regular landfills. The need for permanent collection centers was recognized in California by San Bernardino County in Southern California. This permanent center in San Francisco is open several days each week.
We have paints that are being brought into programs that are 10 years old on average. So we need to clean out the stored material that's been in our homes for a long time.
Safe disposal of household toxics costs a lot, sometimes as much as $900 a drum. And a lot of it is paint that's still usable by someone.
Generally, cities and counties have been giving it away to civic organizations, nonprofits, for graffiti abatement and other things. So it's really good use of a resource that otherwise would have been very costly to dispose of.
We're here because we have graffiti in our park that gang members just seem to put up every day, and we're tired of it. The minute it goes up on the playground equipment, we take it down. We don't want our children exposed, and we're claiming our park back.
We definitely rely on the paint that's donated to us. Otherwise, it would be hard to go out and buy it ourselves.
Save it.
Save it and reuse it.
Recycle. That's the key.
See any graffiti in your community? Get the people motivated out there and use that paint.
Recycle your paint!
Well, you heard them. Recycle your paints. To a household toxics program, if you have one, a graffiti removal program, or another community group, or to your neighbor. Instead of trashing up your neighborhood, your paint could help make it look better. If you have products that are still legal and safe, use them up yourself or pass them on to neighbors. Older and more hazardous products like lead-based paints or outdated pesticides must be stored securely until you can dispose of them through a toxics program. So it's up to us. If we all recycle, reuse, and throw away our household toxics safely, we can stop pollution before it starts.
Okay. Bye-bye. Alex, did you drink that?
Hello, Poison Control Center? My son just drank some floor cleaner.
Now, what we want to watch him for is for any coughing or any respiratory symptoms.
A few seconds. That's all it takes for a curious toddler or an infant to be poisoned. Like most household accidents, this accident could have been prevented.
A lot of the poisonings occur at the time the product is being used or left out.
You cannot teach a 2-year-old poison safety, and the only way to make sure that a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old isn't going to get into a product is to put it in a location where the child can't get access to it.
Medicines are the biggest cause of poisonings, but products found around the house and garage come next. Antifreeze, windshield wiper solutions, gasoline and other petroleum products, oven and drain cleaners, paints, strippers, solvents, bug and weed killers. To be safe, always use the child-resistant caps, lock things up, and never switch containers.
The child drank gasoline that was stored in a milk carton and swallowed just a very, very small amount, choked on it. He stopped breathing and was brought to our facility by the Life Flight helicopter, but was hospitalized for 7 months.
Any time a product is taken out of its original container and put into a food or beverage container is a perfect setup for a poisoning to occur. 40% of our call volume deals with adults, and the vast majority of those occur because the adult does not read the label and does not follow label recommendations.
A frequent problem is mixing two chemicals together. Adding chlorine bleach to other chemicals, ammonia or acid toilet bowl cleaners, for example, produces toxic gas.
And we've had some very minor exposures doing that, but we've also had some very serious life-threatening exposures where people have not been able to get out of an enclosed bathroom rapidly enough and have inhaled large amounts of chlorine gas.
Many other mixtures are dangerous too. So always store different kinds of chemicals separately and securely. Fumes from consumer products can cause problems. They contribute to air pollution indoors, where most of us spend 90% of our time. Scientists like John Gurman are just beginning to study these things.
One surprising thing that has occurred in recent years is that we can now measure pollutants on people's breath. We can measure, for example, benzene on a person's breath and know if they're a smoker. We can measure the dry cleaning fluids on a person's breath, and we can tell that they've either visited a dry cleaning shop that day or perhaps they have some recently dry cleaned clothes in their house. So there's no question that people become exposed to various pollutants, take them into their body, and then later on give them off. One of the questions we do have still is what are the effect of these pollutants on the person?
Studies of indoor air have measured high levels of several gases. They come from products like aerosol sprays, paints and solvents, dry cleaning fluid, moth repellent, and air fresheners, as well as from building materials like plywood and particle board, and from cigarette smoke. At high enough levels, some of these gases could cause health problems, but we can reduce any potential risk with good ventilation and by following label directions carefully. Stripping furniture is one activity where the risks from high exposures are known and serious.
We've seen concentrations in those environments that are much higher than you would find in the industrial workplace.
Methylene chloride is the problem ingredient in some strippers. It can produce a slow carbon monoxide-like poisoning that causes headaches, nausea, confusion, even heart attacks or other serious injury.
Follow those safety precautions to the letter. If it tells you to wear respiratory protection, wear respiratory protection. If it tells you to cover your skin so that it doesn't get exposed to your skin, then do that.
Even when we're not actually using a product, we're often breathing small amounts of it. Pesticides, for example, may keep on killing bugs for weeks or months. Stored products can put solvents and other fumes into the air for years because closed lids don't seal completely.
You're not going to avoid pollutant exposure entirely, but you can minimize it.
You can minimize your exposure by following directions, by using products up completely, and by storing them in a garage or shed, not inside the house. How can you decide what to buy? You have to understand the labels. Labels give lots of information, but you have to read them and ask questions.
Some of the information on product labels is excellent and some of it is very poor. When it comes to usually proper use of the product, safety precautions, labels, in my opinion, are usually very good. Where labels fall down is in their first aid recommendations. And we often find labels that give totally inappropriate and sometimes dangerous first aid recommendations.
Call your poison control center for emergencies. But to avoid them, read the signal words that warn you about immediate dangers from eating or breathing the product or getting it on your skin.
I'd also like to see the signal words, caution, warning, danger, poison, reflect the long-term effects associated with the chemicals found in those products, as well as the short-term effects.
We found that it's very difficult for people to read labels with the degree of sophistication they need today in order to make a good decision.
To help consumers make choices, the San Diego Environmental Health Coalition started a labeling program for products they find less hazardous.
Environmental Health Coalition developed our shelf labeling ecological program because there was not a national program. And we would support a national program for product labeling on the product so that everyone has the opportunity to know what products are considered to be non-toxic and which are toxic.
Deciding what is non-toxic and safe for the environment and for people is controversial and difficult. Almost no materials are entirely safe, although many more are when properly used. For now, you have to make your decisions by gathering information, reading labels, and following directions when you store, use, or throw things away. Reducing toxics at home and saving money? Sound too good to be true? Gina Ryerson and Jan Hetherington clean houses. They find that cleaners like mild soap and baking soda work well for them.
I have a client that I started with recently, and her bathroom hadn't been cleaned for quite a while. And when I'd finished, she walked in and was, "Wow, that's incredible, what do you use?" So I said, "Baking soda." And she said, "Baking soda?" And I said, "Yeah, in the bathtub, in the wash basin." And she said, "That's incredible, that's wonderful."
I have found that the products I use, just using vegetable soap and baking soda, take the same amount of time. And I'm a professional house cleaner with a lot of jobs, in fact, too many, and I spend the same amount on those deeper cleaning jobs as other house cleaners. I always bring my tools with me. I depend on those a lot more even than substances. At home, I just use a little bit of soap and my tools. On the ovens, it really helps because I don't have to spray something on and take all this time and then wipe off this huge mess out of the oven. I can just spot clean it and use my tools for that. I put a little water on the oven window and I put a little bit of baking soda on there and I run the razor across and it comes off right away. I'll start with the gentler tools first. Terry cloth, plastic side of the scrubber, the razor, green plastic scrubber, curly stainless steel scrubber, and pumice. It gets the oldest, worst, baked in grease spots. It's great.
When I do mirrors and windows, I take a spray bottle of water and vinegar, spray onto the surface, and then wipe either with a paper towel or a white linen napkin.
When I can use a squeegee, I don't have to bring out the paper towels and I just use a cloth on the edges. Some vegetable soap or some vinegar, both of them will kill mold really easily. Mildew really won't grow if you have fresh air in the bathroom and you keep things pretty dry. I spend very little on my cleansers. I have a big gallon bottle of vegetable soap that costs about $6, and that will last me a whole month on a lot of jobs.
Much cheaper, as effective if not more so than commercial products.
Gina and Jan find they can clean using just mild soaps and old-fashioned products and rarely have to use strong cleaners. If you buy strong cleaners, buy only what you need and use it up promptly. Prevention is the very best approach. A sink strainer prevents clogs without work, and a dry bathroom won't grow mold. For some jobs, a tool is at least as effective as a chemical product, like using a snake or a plunger to clear drains. Good tools help keep bugs out of houses, too.
I've been combing this cat for at least 2 years, and before there's a flea. We found a flea. It's in the water and it's drowned. It's dead. This water contains detergent. And when I first started doing this, I used to find 15 or 20 fleas every time. And finding 3 now is unusual. You can do it in about 2 minutes. I don't have to use sprays or powders or flea dips. The flea comb is very effective at getting out not only the fleas, but the eggs, and I would recommend it to anyone.
The Biointegral Resource Center, or BIRC, tests less toxic ways to get rid of pests. Here, a comparison of ways to repel slugs and snails: a copper barrier, and a paper barrier impregnated with salt. No snails today. The approach they use is called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM.
We developed the IPM program that the National Park Service has implemented throughout 70 million acres all over the United States. The National Park Service has every pest that anybody in America has. And in the first 3 years of the program, they reduced their pesticide use by over 70%. Pests, like humans, need three things: food, water, and a habitat or shelter. And cockroaches are a good example. Cockroaches have to live in cracks because they have to have the tops and the bottoms of their body surfaces touching surfaces simultaneously. So they got to be in small, confined spaces. So if you take a caulk gun and caulk up the cracks in your kitchen, you reduce the habitat for roaches. And to the degree you do that, the roach population is going to subside. We emphasize using physical and cultural practices and biological controls as the first line of attack. And if you need a pesticide, you can use a pesticide as a backup. But using all of these tactics together enables you to use the least toxic pesticides.
Some of the less toxic methods: boric acid to kill cockroaches inside this trap where children can't reach it. A better mouse trap. A better fly trap. Good bugs to eat bad bugs. A sand barrier to keep termites out of your house. And a heat treatment to kill termites in your house.
There are a whole new generation of pesticides available now that are much more specific to pests. They don't kill everything else. So I think we're going to need pesticides for emergency situations, and we're going to have more benign tools to use.
Can we reduce our use of toxics substantially? These experts think we can.
Well, I'm very optimistic because for the past 20 years, we've been using these methods, and we know that you can reduce pesticide use usually by over 99%.
I think we have the opportunity to get rid of most toxics in the home. Particularly with household cleaners and with pesticides, there are alternatives available, both with other products as well as with other techniques that people can use for home remedies.
Consumers can really make a difference. They can make a tremendous difference in the marketplace by supporting manufacturers that make non-toxic or less hazardous products.
The citizen can play a strong role in sending a message to industry that they want products without these constituents, and that they want products that they can safely put down the drain or safely put into the rubbish.
So we can do it, but exactly how much we'll be able to reduce hazardous wastes around the home depends on you, on the choices you make when you shop, when you store things, when you throw things away, when you work around the house or the car. We can reduce pollution, but it's up to you and me. I'm Jan Hutchins for the League of Women Voters. 2/3 of your body weight is water, so it's safe to say your life depends on clean water. What can you do to keep toxic chemicals out of your drinking water? Chlorinated brake cleaner and paint stripper are extremely toxic. Use non-chlorinated products instead. If you have a toxic product in your home that you can't use up or dispose of safely, save it for the next Household Hazardous Waste Day. Because clean water depends on you.
I've seen some numbers, and these are on a national scale, in terms of the total cost of waste to the American economy of several $100 billion a year, and with an estimate that at least 50% of those costs are recoverable or avoidable. That's an awesomely large number.
Images like these began to change the public's mind about the environment and led to the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. EPA's mission has been to clamp down on pollution throughout the country. We have made great strides. More and better sewage treatment plants are now protecting our rivers and streams, and air pollution emissions from industry and automobiles have been reduced substantially. But this doesn't mean we have eliminated pollution. Often it has just gotten harder to see, but it keeps on being produced year in and year out. The more we try to clean it up, the more we seem to just move it from one place to another. In the end, a lot of it ends up as hazardous waste. Federal law is phasing in requirements to treat hazardous waste before we dispose of it. But the consensus is growing that there must be a better way to approach the entire hazardous waste problem. We should never lose sight of the big picture. Now is the time to ask, shouldn't we spend more time trying to eliminate pollution in the first place before it reaches the end of the pipe? Well, we are. This film is about that effort, a new stage in our progress toward a safer and cleaner environment.
In 1984, Congress created a new national policy for pollution control. It said that, wherever feasible, we must prefer actions that reduce or recycle waste over actions that simply manage waste after it has been created. We're putting this philosophy into practice throughout EPA. But the point of this film is that industry, too, is beginning to realize that traditional end-of-pipe waste management is inefficient, mainly because it has grown so expensive.
And I think it's important that we, as an industry, or as a variety of industries, get together and talk about our waste minimization programs, the solid waste problem, and what we're doing respectively in our companies to solve some of these problems before they become unmanageable.
Industry is investigating new ways to reduce its waste generation by taking a hard look at the way it's produced. Many companies have already made significant reductions. In some cases, they have completely eliminated costly hazardous waste streams. We are only at the beginning stages of this new emphasis on waste reduction. The potential exists to do much more.
It's a misperception that successful waste minimization programs are highly technical, very costly, or have a long payback period. Waste reduction programs can save any company money, and the front-end investment can often be essentially zero. Some waste minimization projects can involve complex process engineering, but surprisingly, often solutions are simple and inexpensive and yield significant payoffs quickly.
The point is that waste minimization means a new way of thinking about environmental management. Every company and even every employee can participate. Waste minimization is a win-win proposition. It means better public health protection, a cleaner environment, and money in the bank for industry. Let's look at the facts.
Land disposal is one option for managing hazardous waste, but prices are rising steeply and capacity is growing scarce. Costs for land disposal have increased well over 300% over the past 4 years, and new restrictions on land disposal are reducing its availability to many generators. As land disposal becomes less viable, companies turn to treatment, but treatment is even more expensive. For instance, it now costs about $2,000 to incinerate a ton of highly toxic waste. Industry must begin to address this problem in a different way. Reducing waste, preventing pollution, is the obvious first step.
For industry today, it is increasingly clear that waste minimization is the alternative to paying the rising costs of hazardous waste management. The benefits to a company that initiates waste minimization are considerable. Let's look at what some companies, large and small, have done.
Before recycling, wash water from tank and equipment cleanout was collected and shipped off-site for biological treatment and disposal. Tighter specifications on washing procedures and the installation of this equipment to collect and filter the wash water allowed our Middleport plant to use the water to make one of our products. This project saved $35,000 per year and reduced the generation of wastewater by nearly 80%.
Because of waste minimization, we haven't had to incur the heavy cost of using a water treatment system that in fact generates a metal hydroxide that has to be manifested and hauled away by a certified hauler to a landfill.
This is a recycling tower. The contaminated coolant is pumped into the top tank where tramp oil is removed. After the oil has been removed, the solution flows to the bottom tank where, after some chemical adjustments, it's ready to go back to the machines again.
Unlike most environmental programs, where EPA and the state set standards that industry must meet, waste minimization is a job best done when companies set their own goals and objectives. Each company's waste minimization program is different, but some common themes stand out. One is the need for top-down corporate commitment. EPA convened this group of managers from different types of companies, large and small, to learn how they designed waste minimization programs to fit their own individual needs.
We've got to solve our waste problem ourselves. I think that we have recognized that waste minimization to be effective has to have corporate commitment. And in my own company, DuPont, this corporate commitment really became focused about 5 years ago when our general policy on waste management was revised to include very explicitly that waste minimization is the top priority option available to our various groups in terms of waste management.
We started this top down by developing a corporate policy first. Then each plant developed their own policy. Then we demonstrate management commitment to those policies by creating an atmosphere in which these things can happen, which was different than the way we had done business before. So we'd publicize our programs. Each plant has charge of its own program because that really has to be the way it is to make it work. Right. We find that we don't minimize much waste at headquarters.
I think, but more importantly than just putting words on a piece of paper, are the corporate management talking about this, are their actions. And that's, I think, what sets out in the minds of a company how serious is management about waste minimization. In our company, we have created and assigned specific people to waste minimization, and these aren't just environmental people, these are line management type people. We've created a waste minimization budget both at the corporate level and within our operating departments.
One of the things that we've found that's worked out real well for us is the fact that if we can get environmental awareness out to the people, in other words, let them know the cost to get rid of waste. And that's not just the cost of disposal and transportation of the waste, but trying to meet all the regulations and all the people that are involved in order to make things happen, cost of manifesting, things like that. And now they can incorporate that in their total plans.
We've been doing a lot of things to give some individual and team recognitions to some projects that have been successful. And a lot of great ideas come from our plants, and I need to maybe say not a lot, all of the great ideas come from our plants. The people are actually doing the job and working at the job day to day.
Another theme of successful waste minimization programs is the way they involve employees at all levels. Commitment comes from the top, but ideas can come from anywhere.
What's your experiences?
You know, we were able initially to really lop off a lot of the easy things, the things that everyone should be doing, the good things with administrative programs and the work of the environmental people. But we've found that the employee involvement teams really work well, and using this broad groups of different people in different functions really has been successful.
The third essential element in waste minimization is accurate tracking of wastes and costs. Once companies discover how much they pay in out-of-pocket costs and how much they risk in future liability, the case for waste minimization is compelling.
Well, at Mid-Atlantic Finishing, liability was certainly an eye-opener for us. We had a situation where, by not properly minimizing and managing our waste, we wound up with a waste product that we had to dispose of, which cost our company in excess of $60,000. So what we had to do was think about a way that we could take those products out of the waste stream that was causing us a problem at the end of the pipe and do something with them before we got to that.
Mid-Atlantic Finishing looked at the technology available and found that we did not have the wherewithal or the financial help available to afford large pieces of equipment to bring us into compliance. We looked at what we could do to minimize our waste in a cost-effective method within our own facility, and found that these procedures were drag-out stations, drag-out bars across our plating stations, spray rinsing, counterflow rinsing, and specifically in our case, electrolytic recovery. We found this to be not only a cost savings, but an actual return of capital to our company. When we had the opportunity to expand our business, our primary concern was, could we take the technology that we used in a much smaller facility and implement that when we came back and expanded into a large facility like this. What we in fact really did was take the same technology, and we'll have a drag out station where the crane actually acts as a drag out. We still use dead rinsing, counterflow rinsing, spray rinsing. In this particular case, because it is on a much larger scale, our savings as far as metal recovery happens to be much greater because of the size involved. You're actually spraying that plating solution back into the plating tank. The operator would lift it in this typical manner so that all those drippings do go back into the plating tank. There lies the savings. That's your metal going back into solution.
Not only did it create an end of pipe that was permissible, but we also had a savings and a return on the metals.
This was a water stream?
This was in a water stream.
How did the state agencies that deal with regulation of water streams, were they interested in this program too?
Very much interested, because our POTW, the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, we pump directly to them. So obviously anything that we take out of the waste stream before it gets to them, it's something they don't have to deal with.
You know, that's a value to waste minimization that I think too often we overlook, and that is, what is the downstream impact of our waste minimization programs?
Source reduction and recycling have become important components in the way we do business in all of our plants. In some plants, we have reduced our waste streams down to zero. EPA regulations have put a lot of stress on industry today, and we're no different than anybody else. To reduce our volume of waste, we replaced kerosene, which used to be used to wash out these filter pumps, with mineral seal oil. This mineral seal oil and the waste that's generated in the filter bag is replaced into the ink and recycled back and forth. By having an organic material in there, the material is considered non-hazardous, and it's better for us and for our customers.
I think that's where it really catches fire, and I'm convinced that the average worker has more ingenuity that we haven't tapped in waste minimization than what we've already seen. And so I'm convinced that this program is going to have a lot more momentum. It's going to continue to roll, and I really feel very strongly about it. And I don't think it's the reserve of the larger companies. We've got some smaller companies that have begun minimization. You've got a good example. How about sharing it with us, Bob?
A technique that we at EG&G Pressure Science have discovered is probably applicable to a lot of manufacturing plants. We use a coolant in our machining process. In use, the coolant becomes contaminated with tramp oil. Past practice was to have the contaminated coolant hauled away for disposal. The cost was considerable. We've recently instituted a recycling process which permits us to remove the contaminants and reuse the coolant. This is a CNC mill. The green liquid is the coolant which circulates continuously through the machine, lubricating and cooling the cutting tool. This piece of equipment is a yellow-bellied sump sucker. It has a two-compartment tank. One compartment holds the contaminated coolant which has been pumped from the sump of the machine. This is the liquid we used to have to dispose of. The second compartment contains recycled coolant which is pumped into the sump after the sump has been emptied. The whole operation takes about 15 minutes and is performed bi-weekly. To sell this idea is to let people know that, hey, you can save bucks. It goes right to the bottom line.
But once that gets started, I think waste minimization is a program that will really feed on itself in terms of success.
It becomes infectious.
It becomes infectious.
It does. For example, we, as a large company, use over 2,000 chemicals in our processes. And even something simple like washing your hands. We found ourselves with having 15 different kind of soaps we had throughout the whole plant. We've now gotten that down to 2.
We had one large plant that must have been buying 10 different kinds of coolants for each little department. We found that we could cut down the number of coolants, have a central supply of those coolants, and control the use and disposal of coolant much better that way.
Companies find that documenting a program's achievements helps build momentum. This kind of thinking has led to many successes.
Formulating 2 pesticides in the same equipment historically results in the generation of a contaminated water detergent solution. Since we planned to use a solvent in the process, the design team came up with the idea of substituting part of that solvent for the normal water detergent wash. This resulted in the total elimination of a waste stream and its attendant costs. And it goes to demonstrate just what can happen when people think waste minimization. Another example of waste minimization is these U-turn containers of pesticide from our Jacksonville, Florida plant, which are sold directly to consumers who use the pesticide and return the containers to FMC for credit for any unused product. Because the containers are sealed and specially fitted to connect directly to the applicator, there's no consumer exposure. If the pesticide container meets specifications, which it almost always does, it's simply refilled and resold without rinsing. The recycling of these containers results in several things: reduced employee and consumer exposure, the elimination of spills and contamination, and the elimination of empty containers and their disposal costs.
At the Dow plant in Louisiana, the polyethylene plant had a problem with plastic pellets entering in their waste stream. Plastic pellets float on water, and they presented a problem with wildlife because they mistaken them for fish eggs in the water. So that plant used the principle of the plastic pellets floating by installing some weirs in their wastewater trench system, a multiple series of them. I think it was 3 layers of weirs. They were overflow, underflow weirs. And they were able to collect those pellets by vacuuming them and then putting them back into the process and recycling them. So that was one simple way that they were able to solve one of their waste problems at that particular plant.
You have just seen some examples of waste minimization programs in action. They were taken from companies that might be similar to yours. If your company is beginning a waste minimization program or expanding one already in place, you are making a wise business decision.
I think in the last analysis, it's going to take the individual recognizing that it's a part of his job, just like safety, just like quality. When we get that kind of thinking in with our people, then it's going to work.
Something that really motivates our people is being recognized for the work they do and for the accomplishments they make in waste minimization.
Getting people properly informed and motivated is what makes a waste minimization program work.
Waste minimization is proactive, it protects the environment, and it's cost effective. We truly have a win-win situation here. The government wins, the public wins, the environmentalists win, and gentlemen, we win.
Waste minimization is more than just a noble effort for the preservation of the environment. It's good business. It pays off. It goes right to the bottom line.
I know that making waste reduction the centerpiece of our environmental improvement efforts will take time. EPA can and will provide technical assistance. But results are going to come from a commitment by all of us to make it work. It's the best solution to our environmental problems. But it's a solution only if people get involved. And that's why this film has been more about people and companies and management than about engineering. I hope that what you've seen will encourage you to start waste reduction programs in your own company or plant. Look for opportunities. Everyone watching this film must become actively involved in this exciting new approach to improving our environment.
For additional information on EPA's waste minimization programs, contact your EPA regional office. They can provide you with current materials, including this illustrated brochure. Your regional office can also provide information on how to use EPA's computerized waste minimization clearinghouse. There are now at least 29 states that have active waste minimization programs. Some states have multiple programs that address several different areas of waste minimization. The brochure lists all of these programs and how to contact them for further information. You can also contact EPA's National RCRA Superfund Hotline. Dial 800-424-9346, or in Washington, D.C., 382-3000.